Well, if you've listened to the Ask Pastor John podcast for more than a few weeks, you know that we regularly explore life's deepest sadnesses and most painful losses. This is a fitting place to hear Pastor John address hard situations, and those hard situations include couples who are unable to bear children of their own. On infertility, we have looked at an amazing Bible text, an amazing promise in Isaiah 56, verses 4 and 5. And you can see how important Isaiah 56, verses 4 and 5 is pastorally in the Ask Pastor John book. If you have that handy, look at page 193. There you're going to see that the same incredible promise can be applied to two different sadnesses, infertility and lifelong singleness. One of those essential texts you really want in hand when the time is right in ministering to others, Isaiah 56, verses 4 to 5. And so lifelong singleness is, again, the topic today in an email from a woman, a listener who writes in anonymously, "Hello, Pastor John. I'm 43 and a faithful Christian, have been all my life, but I have never been married. I've been visiting many congregations in my community and have yet to find a suitable mate. I am haunted by the story of Jephthah and his daughter at the end of Judges 11, verses 34 to 40. I know the point of that story is to teach us not to make rash vows, especially to God, but when I see how his daughter wanted to spend the last 2 months of her life mourning that she will never be a wife or mother, it terrifies me. It shows me that if I don't get married, I am missing out. The fear is compounded when I consider Jesus' words from Matthew 22:30. I know some teachers, including you, who use this verse to give hope for single people, but I don't see what is hopeful about it. I resonate with Jephthah's daughter. If people are neither married nor given in marriage in the resurrection, that means if one doesn't get married in this life, they will never know the joys of marriage. They won't know what it's like to touch or to be touched by someone of the opposite gender. They won't know what it's like to hold their own child in their arms. These blessings that such a single person may have wished for their entire lives will be unrealized for all eternity. Even if whatever God has in store for us is better, won't they still wonder what they missed, what it seems everyone, Christian and non-Christian alike, seem to enjoy? My question is, if I die unmarried, yet remain faithful to Christ and have kept myself pure, will I have the same grief in my heart that Jephthah's daughter dealt with in those last 2 months of her life for everything that I will never experience as well?
Before I saw this question yesterday and had time to think about it, I was sitting in my chair over my Bible, pondering how pervasive and inevitable deep disappointments are that will never be turned around in this life. I thought of people who are blind, perhaps from birth. They will never see the sun or moon or the beauties of a flower or the face of a friend. All will be dark until death. That will be their life on earth. I thought of people who are deaf and live in total silence all their life. No music, no voices from a family or friend, no sweet robin song, no blasting thunder. I thought of people who are paralyzed because they were born that way or had an accident and perhaps can't feel anything below their neck. Paraplegics maybe, who can't run or walk or play pickleball all the way to the end of their life. It never changes. All of life paralyzed. That was what they were dealt. I thought of people who grow up in very poor, desperate conditions where they never learn to read. No Shakespeare, no Milton, no Herbert, no novels, no poems, not even a note or a letter from a friend, confined to a small world of limited experience, no reading. I thought of people who are miserable in marriages. All their hopes for what marriage was supposed to be have crashed. The romance has gone. There's no mutual affection shown anymore. Both partners live in frustration and disappointment that the other doesn't meet their emotional needs. The children are broken. All the dreams seem dashed all the way to the end, for better, for worse, and it turned out to be worse. I thought of refugees and people whose entire lives are decimated by war. I see the pictures today. People who, as a class, are hated, driven from one place to the next, scarcely any peace, any security, any comforts at all. And then there are the countless diseases, sicknesses, disabilities that people live with and die with and never experience healing or freedom from debilitating suffering. Now, I mention these realities in this world not to minimize this woman's sorrows at not being married or having children. Her longings are good and right. Human beings were designed by God to be married, to be hugged in a one flesh union, to have sexual relations that bring forth exquisite pleasures and the cutest little persons. We were made to be cherished and respected in a lifelong union of man and woman in marriage. That is deeply right, deeply human, deeply good, deeply gracious of God, and not to have it can be profoundly disappointing and painful, and I feel no need to minimize that. I mention these things because we really do need to have a biblical, realistic assessment of the possibilities of this fallen age, which is ruined by sin. And by ruined, I mean virtually everything that was designed by God for human pleasure is corrupted and in greater or lesser ways wrecked. Here's Paul's most penetrating description of our world. He said, "The creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope that the creation itself would be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies." That's Romans 8:18-23. Subjected to futility, bondage to corruption, groaning as Spirit-filled Christians, waiting for our bodies to be redeemed from their present wasting away and dying condition. What an amazing, painful, realistic, worldly hope dashing assessment of the world. History is a conveyor belt of diseased, broken, frustrated, disappointed, dying, gloriously human persons and bodies. We in the West have so many suffering ameliorating amenities that we can scarcely begin to imagine how hopeless this life feels to billions of people who don't have a fraction of our comforts. This is why the New Testament, unlike the Old Testament, including the experience of Jephthah's daughter, is so relentlessly focused on the hope of eternal life. Spectacular hope, incredible inheritance, lavish happiness, being swallowed up by life at the resurrection, where the Lamb will bring us to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from our eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. Over and over again, the New Testament presents the Christian life as shot through with sorrow and pain and disappointment and affliction and rejection and persecution, all of it sustained with gladness by rejoicing in the hope of the glory of God. Romans 5:1. Apart from Jesus, nobody in the New Testament suffered nearly as much as Paul did, and yet he embraced it, even his singleness, as part of his calling, even though he had a right to have more pleasures than he got. Listen to what he says. This is 1 Corinthians 9. Do we not have a right to eat and drink? Do we not have a right to take along a believing wife, as do the other apostles and the brothers of the Lord and Cephas? Or is it only Barnabas and I who have no right to refrain from working for a living? But I have made no use of any of these rights. The flag flying over Paul's life of self-denial and sorrow was 2 Corinthians 6:10. Sorrowful, yet always rejoicing. I'm not asking our 43-year-old single friend not to be sorrowful. I'm not. If our arm is cut off, we are sorrowful. If we are not granted a legitimate, lifelong desire to be one flesh with a person of the opposite sex, we are sorrowful. But we do not feel singled out. We do not feel picked on. We do not feel mistreated by God. And we do not feel hopeless, as if in the resurrection we will walk the barren hills with Jephthah's daughter and bewail our virginity. No, we will not bewail. We will not wail on any hill in the age to come. These are hand-clapping, dancing hills and will satisfy our deepest longings. Whatever we have sacrificed in this world is working for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, because we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, and the things that are unseen are eternal. And in the meantime, as we go deeper and deeper with God, finding our richest contentment in Him, this life of singleness or marriage need not be wasted or meaningless, but full of meaningful fruitfulness and joy as we pour ourselves out for the present and eternal good of others.
Moving. Thank you, Pastor John, and thank you for joining us today. If you are going through a dark season and you need perspective, email us. Find a link to do so at askpastorjohn.com. Also worth looking at Isaiah 56, verses 4 and 5, and you can see how and why that fits in here in the Ask Pastor John book, if you have that on page 193. Well, Christmas is coming quickly. We need to look at gifts and how they all should point us to Christ. Every gift pointing us to Christ. I'm Tony Ranky. We'll see you next time on Thursday for that. Thanks for listening.